What UVA1 actually is and why it's so much more damaging than the UV rays we've been focused on. The first new UV filter approval in 25 years. What UVA1 damage actually looks like on your skin over time. Let's talk about how to evaluate whether your sunscreen is protecting you. I'm going to tell you about a type of light that's been aging your skin for your entire life. And until very recently, we had no idea it was even a problem. New research presented at the American Academy of Dermatology conference in 2026 has fundamentally changed how we understand UV damage. We've always known about UVB rays that cause sunburn and UVA rays that cause aging. But it turns out that there's a specific range of long-wave UVA radiation that penetrates deeper into your skin than anything else. And most sunscreens don't adequately protect against it. Now you might be thinking, I wear SPF 50 every day. I reapply, I'm doing everything right. How is there radiation getting through that I don't know about? And here's what the research is showing. Your SPF number measures UVB protection. The term broad spectrum means your sunscreen covers some UVA. But within the UVA spectrum, there are shorter wavelengths and longer wavelengths. And those long wave UVA1 rays, the ones between 340 and 400 nanometers, and visible light, or HEVL, the ones between 400 and 420 nanometers, are the ones causing the most oxidative damage to your collagen and DNA. And most American sunscreens may not be doing all they could. So here's what I'm covering today. I'm breaking down the new research on UVA1 radiation and what it's actually doing to your skin at the cellular level. I'm explaining why the sunscreen you've been using might be protecting you from sunburn, but not from photoaging. And I'm walking you through what adequate UVA protection actually looks like, because the standards we've been using in the United States are about to change. Let's start with what this research actually found. At the 2026 American Academy of Dermatology conference, researchers from Neutrogena presented new data on UV radiation and its impact on skin aging. The concept of what their research was expanding on was the difference between UVA2 radiation, which is the shorter wavelength UVA that's closer to UVB, and UVA1 radiation, which is the longer wavelength UVA that penetrates deepest into the dermis. And what they found is that UVA1, the rays between 340 and 400 nanometers, and even the sun's high energy visible rays in the range of 400 to 420 nanometers, is responsible for the majority of oxidative damage that drives visible photoaging. Here's what that actually means in biological terms. When UVA1 radiation penetrates into the dermis, it generates reactive oxygen species. These are those unstable molecules that damage cellular structures. Those reactive oxygen species trigger inflammatory cascades that break down collagen and elastin, the structural proteins that keep your skin firm and elastic. They also cause DNA damage and fibroblasts, the cells that make collagen, which means your skin loses its ability to repair itself over time. This oxidative stress is the primary driver of wrinkles, sagging, loss of elasticity, uneven pigmentation, and what we see associated with sun damage. What makes this research significant is that it quantifies how much of that damage is specifically from UVA1 versus UVB, or shorter UVA wavelengths. And the data shows that UVA1 is responsible for about 80% of the visible aging we see in sun-exposed skin. That's a staggering number. It means that if you're wearing a sunscreen that only adequately covers UVB and short UVA, you're preventing sunburn, but you're still getting the majority of the damage that makes you look older. I had a patient a few months ago, mid-50s, lifelong daily SPF user. She came in so frustrated because she had significant photoaging despite doing everything dermatologists recommend. She'd been wearing SPF 30 or SPF 50 religiously for 30 years. And when I looked at all the products she'd been using, they were all with older formulations with avobenzone as the primary UVA filter, which may not have been stabilized. Avobenzone covers UVA1, but it may degrade in sunlight within a couple of hours. So she'd been protecting herself from sunburn, but not from the deep UVA1 damage that was aging her skin. This research is giving us the language to explain what's been happening to patients like her, and honestly, to most people who've been wearing sunscreen consistently, but still seeing sun damage accumulate over the years in the form of brown spots and photoaging. The protection we've had access to in the US has not been adequate for the full spectrum of UV radiation that causes aging. Now let's break down what UVA1 actually is and why it's so much more damaging than the UV rays we've been focused on. Let's do a quick breakdown of the UV spectrum, because this is where most people get lost. Ultraviolet radiation from sun comes in three main types: UVB, UVA2, and UVA1. Think of these as different lengths of light waves, and the longer the wavelength, the deeper it penetrates into your skin. UVB has the shortest wavelength, 280 to 320 nanometers. These rays only penetrate the outermost layer of your skin, the epidermis. UVB is what causes sunburn, and it's what your SPF number is measuring. If you were SPF 50, you can stay in the sun 50 times longer than you could with no sunscreen before you burn. That's UVB protection. And we've been really good at blocking UVB in the United States for decades. Our SPF technology works. Now, UVA2 has a medium wavelength, 320 to 340 nanometers. These rays penetrate deeper than UVB, reaching into the upper dermis. UVA2 contributes to tanning, sun pigmentation, and the early stages of collagen breakdown. Now, most broad spectrum sunscreens cover UVA2 reasonably well, especially if they contain avobenzone or zinc oxide. UVA1 has the longest wavelength, 340 to 400 nanometers. These rays penetrate all the way through the epidermis and deep into the dermis where your collagen matrix lives. UVA1 doesn't cause immediate visible damage like a sunburn. You don't feel it, but it's generating oxidative stress at a cellular level every single day. And because it penetrates so deeply, it's damaging the structural foundation of your skin, breaking down collagen, damaging elastin, and causing DNA mutations in the cells that are supposed to repair that damage. Here's the visual I give my patients. Imagine your skin is a building. UVB is like damage to the paint on the outside. You see it immediately and you can fix it by repainting. UVA2 is like the cracks forming in the walls. You start to notice them over time, and if you catch them early, you can repair them. UVA1 is like damage to the foundation of the building. You don't see it for years, but by the time you do, the structural integrity is compromised, and fixing it requires major reconstruction. That's why UVA1 protection matters so much. It's not about preventing a sunburn you can see tomorrow. It's about preventing the deep cumulative damage that shows up as wrinkles, sagging, and age spots 10, 20, 30 years from now. So why haven't we been protecting against UVA1 adequately? Let's talk about the filters we've been using. The primary UVA filter that's been available in American sunscreens for the last few decades is avobenzone. Avobenzone does cover part of the UVA spectrum. It absorbs wavelengths from about 310 to 400 nanometers, so technically it covers UVA1. The problem is that avobenzone is extremely unstable. When it's exposed to UV light, it starts to degrade within an hour or two. And when it degrades, you lose UVA protection even though your SPF number, your UVB protection, stays relatively intact. Sunscreen manufacturers have tried to solve this problem by combining avobenzone with stabilizers like octocrylene, or by using encapsulation technology to protect the avobenzone molecule from breaking down. And those strategies help, but they don't fully solve the problem. Even the best avobenzone formulations are losing efficacy after a couple of hours to sun exposure, which means if you apply sunscreen in the morning and you're outside all day, your UVA1 protection is degrading significantly by midday. Compare that to what's been available in Europe and Asia for the last 20 plus years. European sunscreens use UV filters like bemotrizinol, also called Tinosorb S, which covers the full UVA spectrum, including deep UVA1, and it's photostable. It doesn't degrade in sunlight. You apply it once and it maintains its protective capability for hours. Asian sunscreens use filters like Tinosorb M and Uvinol A+, which also provide broad, stable UVA1 coverage. These filters have been available outside the US since the early 2000s, but because of how slow the FDA approval process is, Americans have been stuck with outdated technology. Now, I've been ordering European sunscreens for myself for years specifically because of this. La Roche-Posay Antelios, Bioderma Photoderm, Eucerin Sun, these brands have been using modern UV filters that actually protect against UVA1 for decades. And every time I'd recommend them to patients, they'd ask, why can't they just buy the same thing at CVS? The answer was regulatory bureaucracy. These filters work, they're safe, we just didn't have FDA approval to use them in American products. That gap is finally closing. In 2026, the FDA approved bemotrizinol for use in US sunscreens, the first new UV filter approval in 25 years. And that approval is going to fundamentally change the American sunscreen market, because now manufacturers can formulate products with the same level of UVA1 protection that's been standard in Europe for decades. Now let's talk about what UVA1 damage actually looks like on your skin over time. Here's what makes UVA1 damage so insidious. You don't see it happening in real time. UVB damage is immediate. You go outside without sunscreen, you get a sunburn. You know you messed up. UVA1 damage is cumulative and silent. You're getting oxidative stress in your dermis every single day, and you won't see the consequences for years or even decades. The visible signs of UVA1 damage are what we call photoaging. This includes fine lines and wrinkles, especially around the eyes and the mouth. It includes loss of firmness and elasticity. Your skin starts to sag because the collagen and elastin network that used to hold it taut has been broken down. It also includes uneven pigmentation, age spots, sunspots, and melasma, because UVA1 triggers melanocytes to overproduce pigment in response to oxidative stress. And it includes visible blood vessels, especially on the cheeks and nose, because UVA1 damages the walls of small capillaries in your skin. If you've ever looked at someone in their 60s or 70s and thought, wow, their skin looks so much older than their actual age, what you're seeing is decades of UVA1 damage. And here's the thing, a lot of those people probably wore sunscreen. They probably didn't get many sunburns, but the sunscreens they used didn't adequately protect against UVA1, so they accumulated the deep dermal damage that drives visible aging anyway. I had a patient recently, late 60s, retired teacher, spent her career working indoors but always near windows. She'd never had a bad sunburn in her life, but she had significant photoaging, deep wrinkles, sagging jowls, diffuse pigmentation across her cheeks. And she was confused because she thought if you didn't burn, you weren't getting sun damage. I had to explain that UVA1 penetrates through windows. She'd been getting chronic UVA1 exposure for 40 years sitting by the window in her classroom. And because she wasn't burning, she didn't realize she needed protection. That's the lesson here. If you wait until you see sun damage to start protecting against UVA1, you've already accumulated years or decades of oxidative stress that's broken down your collagen. The time to protect against UVA is now, before that damage becomes visible. And that means using sunscreens that actually cover the full UVA spectrum, not just the UVB that causes sunburn. So what does adequate UVA1 protection actually look like? Let's talk about how to evaluate whether your sunscreen is protecting you. Here's the frustrating reality of shopping for sunscreen in the United States. The labels don't tell you how much UVA1 protection you're getting. You see an SPF number, which measures UVB. You see the term broad spectrum, which means the sunscreen meets the FDA's minimum standard for UVA coverage. But that standard is low, and it doesn't specify how much of the UVA1 range is covered or how photostable the filter is. So two sunscreens can both be labeled SPF 50 broad spectrum and have wildly different levels of actual UVA1 protection. In Europe and Asia, they use rating systems that give you more information. In Japan and Korea, you'll see a PA rating, PA+, PA++, and so on. The more plus signs, the higher the UVA protection. In Europe, some sunscreens use a UVA star rating or a UVA PF number that tells you the UVA protection factor. We don't have that in the US, so you have to know how to read the active ingredients list. Here's what to look for. If the active ingredients include bemotrizinol, you're getting excellent photostable UVA1 coverage. That's the gold standard right now. If you see zinc oxide at a concentration of 10% or higher, you're also getting broad spectrum UVA1 protection. Zinc oxide is a mineral filter that physically blocks UV across the entire spectrum, and it's photostable. Same with titanium dioxide, though it's slightly less effective at longer UVA1 wavelengths. If you see avobenzone listed as the primary UVA filter, check whether there's a stabilizer with it, usually octocrylene or something listed as encapsulated avobenzone. If it's stabilized, you're getting moderate UVA1 coverage for the first hour or two after application. If avobenzone is listed alone without stabilizers, you're getting limited UVA1 protection that degrades quickly. That's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And if you only see UVB filters like the ones listed here without any UVA filter listed, you're basically getting zero UVA1 protection. Those are old school formulations that only cover UVB, and they should not be in your primary sunscreen if you care about preventing photoaging. I tell my patients when you're shopping for sunscreen, flip the bottle over and read the active ingredients list. Ignore the marketing on the front. Ignore the SPF number for a second. Look for bemotrizinol, the new UVA1 filter, zinc oxide, or stabilized avobenzone. If you're seeing one of these, you know you're getting meaningful UVA1 protection. If you don't, keep looking. Now let's talk about the practical reality of protecting against UVA1 in everyday life. Here's the piece of this that shocks most people. UVA1 penetrates through glass. UVB does not. So if you're sitting by a window in your house or driving in your car or working in an office with big windows, you're getting UVA1 exposure even though you're technically indoors. And because you're not getting UVB exposure, you're not burning. So you don't realize you actually need protection. This is why dermatologists recommend wearing sunscreen every single day, even if you're not going outside. It's not about being neurotic. It's about the fact that UVA1 is coming through your windows and causing cumulative damage to your skin. And most people don't think about this until they start noticing photoaging on the left side of their face, the side that gets sun exposure while driving, or around their eyes if they sit by a window at work. The research presented at the AAD in 2026 specifically highlighted this as a major source of unrecognized UV exposure. They tracked participants who worked indoors but near windows, and they measured the amount of UVA1 exposure they were getting over the course of a year. The results showed significant cumulative exposure, enough to cause measurable oxidative damage to the skin, even though these people were not spending time outdoors and were not getting sunburned. I had a patient a few years ago, early 40s, a graphic designer, worked from home in a desk by a big window for 10 years. She came in with uneven pigmentation and fine lines concentrated on the right side of her face, the side that faced the window. She'd never connected the dots between sitting by that window every day and the sun damage she was seeing. And she wasn't wearing sunscreen at home because she thought she didn't need it indoors. That's a mistake I see all the time. So here's the protocol. If you're going to be near windows for more than an hour during the daylight hours, you need sunscreen. If you're driving for more than 15 minutes, you need sunscreen. If you're working in an office with natural light, you need sunscreen. This isn't paranoia. This is protecting against a type of radiation that's been quietly aging your skin your entire life. The last thing I want to address is what this means moving forward, because the US sunscreen market is about to change in a big way. Here is what just happened. The FDA approval of bemotrizinol in 2026. The first new UV filter approved in the United States in 25 years is opening the door for a complete shift in how American sunscreens are formulated. Manufacturers now have access to a photostable, broad-spectrum filter that covers UVA1 more effectively, and they're going to start reformulating their product lines to include it. We're already seeing the first products hit the market, and I expect over the next 2 to 3 years, bemotrizinol is going to become standard in most high-quality sunscreens sold in the US. That's huge for public health because it means the average person walking into a drugstore is going to have access to the same level of UV protection that Europeans and Asians have had for decades. You're not going to need to special order sunscreen from overseas or pay luxury prices for imported brands. You're going to be able to buy effective UVA1 protection at CVS for $15 to $25. That's a game changer. The other thing that's going to change is education. Dermatologists are going to start talking more about UVA1 specifically, not just broad spectrum as a vague concept. patients are going to start asking about UVA1 coverage when they're choosing sunscreens, the same way they already ask about SPF numbers. And hopefully, the FDA will eventually update labeling requirements to give consumers better information about UVA protection, the way European and Asian regulators already do. I'm genuinely excited about this shift because I've been watching patients accumulate photoaging and dark spots for years, despite doing everything we've told them to. They wore sunscreen daily, they reapplied, they avoided peak sun hours, and they still developed wrinkles, pigmentation, and precancerous lesions because the products available to them didn't adequately protect against UVA1. That's not their fault. That's a failure of the products and the regulatory system, and it's finally being corrected. The research presented at the AAD in 2026 is giving us the scientific foundation to explain why UVA1 matters and what it's doing to skin at the cellular level. The FDA approval of bemotrizinol is giving us the tools to actually protect against it. And the next few years are going to be about making sure everyone has access to that protection and knows how to use it correctly. So that's the story. UVA1 protection has been quietly aging your skin for your entire life. Most American sunscreens haven't been protecting against it adequately, and that's about to change. The research is clear. The new filters are here, and now you know what to look for. So here's what I want you to take away from this. UVA1 radiation, the long wave UVA between 340 and 400 nanometers, is responsible for about 80% of visible photoaging. It penetrates deep into your dermis, it goes through windows, and most American sunscreens haven't been covering it well. The FDA just approved bemotrizinol, a photo-stable UVA1 filter that's been used safely in Europe for over 25 years, and it's finally available in US products. When you're shopping for sunscreen now, look for bemotrizinol, zinc oxide, or stabilized avobenzone in the active ingredient list. That's how you know you're getting real UVA protection. Now I want to hear from you. Did you know about UVA1 before this video, or is this completely new information? And have you noticed photoaging on one side of your face from driving or sitting by windows? Drop it in the comments because I want to know how many people have been experiencing this without realizing what was causing it. And if this video was helpful to you, please share it with a friend or someone who could use this information. Thanks for watching.